This podcast is a quest for well-being, a quest for a meaningful life through the exploration of fundamental truth. Enlightening ideas, insights on physical, mental, and spiritual health. The inspiration is love. The aspiration is to awaken new ways of thinking that can lead us to a new way of being well. Welcome to Body, Mind, and Soul Healing Conversations.
People sometimes think back to bad situations and memories as learning experiences. They may come to realize they were actually strong for their age, or that they did everything they could. They learn that it's okay to show their emotions, even with people they allowed to bully or hurt them in the past. They become strong protectors, not allowing similar hurts to occur again. They heal by seeing their problems for what they really are, then letting them go. They come to find out they can be safe. They come to find out they are honorable and lovable, okay just as they are. They can accept themselves. They can come to realize they have choices. They learn to have hope. These are a few of the potential miracles that can occur when effective counseling takes place. Valeria interviews Dr. Jason Buck. He is a licensed professional counselor and founder of Desert Eagle Counseling Services. Jason started having anxiety problems when he was an adolescent. He earned a master's degree in professional counseling from Ottawa University in 2008, then went on to achieve a doctoral degree in behavioral health from Arizona State University in 2012. He is married and enjoys sports, spending time with friends and family, learning new things, volunteering, and video games. Through his clinical experiences, he has had the privilege of working with developmentally disabled adolescents and adults, inmates, substance abusers, and those suffering from a variety of mood disorders, including anxiety and depression. He currently specializes in the treatment of adult individuals suffering from anxiety, trauma, and PTSD, and mood disorders. Meet Dr. Jason at deserteaglecounseling.com. Here's the interview with Dr. Jason Buck.
In your own words, who is Jason Buck?
Okay, so without saying anything else, I would say that he is someone who is close to God, someone who God throughout the lifespan from about 12 to 13 years old has been more faithful to Jason Buck than Jason Buck has been to God. So we would say this is a guy who seeks to continually turn back to God, where the healing is, where the love is, where the peace lives, and all that stuff. That's good. To be able to say who I am, it would start there at the core if that was able to be put into words, which is hard to put that into words, because it's people talk about God and how they experience God, and how I experience God a lot of times comes as a feeling, almost like a tingling through the whole body. It could be at the base of the head. It can emanate all the way out throughout the core, out to the outer limbs. But often I feel that in my neck and in my face and in my arms and in my chest. So I feel a lot of times when I'm in that flow with where God lives, things just sort of, I feel really confident in that place, because it's me, but it's not me, if that makes any sense.
Yes, very much. It makes a lot of sense to me. Talk to me about how you uncover these this experience with God, this relationship, this realization that God is not separated from you, it's not something that's out there, but in you and of you.
I grew up regularly going to church with my family. And when I would go to church, I would hear the scriptures being spoken in church.
Yeah.
And I felt that, and that was from when I was really young. And I could maybe unpack that by saying that was scaffolding, possibly, that was being built, like a ground that was being built up. But maybe it made sense, but maybe it didn't really make sense. And when I had an experience when I was 12 to 13, somewhere in between there, it was the summer between, let's see, it was 3 months before my 13th birthday, if I want to get real precise. And that experience with God that happened, and it was like God saying to me, like, you have the scaffolding, now you can fly.
Yeah.
You can fly with me.
Yes.
So
yeah.
Does that answer that question?
I would love to understand that it's a metaphor, flying. To me, I can interpret it as being liberated, being free. Is that what you felt?
Sure, yeah.
Freedom?
Sure. And ironically, I became a dunker later in life, and that's kind of like flying physically for a human being for a short period of time. You take off from the ground and you feel a little bit of lift as you're flying through the air. It might only be for a second or two, but it's like it's a physical acting out of that flying core, if that makes sense.
Yes. With that in mind, I would love to hear also the story that you told me before the recording about your mother in the car and how you responded to her.
Yeah.
So what happened? Yeah, please, Jason. That was a good story.
So this is a story that is told to me, but I don't remember. But my mom tells me the story that I was probably in that age range when I had that encounter with God. And I knew from that point on that my whole perspective of the world was probably different than most. I don't know why. That was maybe just an intuition that maybe other people are really bound to the worldly stuff, to the material focus and things like that. And so here I am, and I'm like, oh, I just kind of know that I'll always be with God. If I live 100 years here, then after this, whenever that time is gone, or if I were to die today, or if I were to die 100 years today, I know I'll be with God. And this was a drive that I was taking with my mom back home from the grocery store or on an errand, and we had come to a stop where it was our right of way, and she was about to go, and she didn't notice, but another car came zooming right through the stop sign or something, like they had violated the law, and she had a panic about that, and she I guess looked at me and said, "Wow, that was a close one," and I could just kind of sense her anxiety and her panic there. And I immediately just, I guess, looked at her and said, "Well, Mom, you know that if we were to die today, everything would be okay."
Yeah.
And she tells that story, and it's very emotional.
Yeah.
I wish I remembered it.
Right? Yes. Yeah. It's a beautiful one, though. The question that comes to me is, how do you make sense of that? Having the experience of feeling what God is and then carrying this wisdom as a child. Why it doesn't happen to everyone? That's what I wonder a lot of times. Do you think there's something different about you?
Yeah, I wonder that same thing, Valeria. I do. I hope for that for everyone, because I believe that it's accessible. I believe it's available. But I don't know.
Yeah, right. Some say that that's a different, let's say, religious philosophy, spiritual philosophies, that we reincarnate or come back here. It's almost like having different lifetimes. Not almost, actually, that's exactly it. We have different lifetimes, and then we gather all the information here, the wisdom, and then the mind changes, and then we carry that information to a new body. So do you actually consider that possibility of being reincarnation of some sort, or the rebirth of that wisdom that was once here?
Oh, wow, yeah. So how I would answer that is I would say there is a connection to faith ancestors. So
yes, right.
Some faith ancestors that I embrace are those like Ezekiel or Samson or even David or even Jesus. So when I'm reading through the printed material of their stories, in the Bible, I can put myself there. So I can see myself where Elijah's offering is being poured over with water, poured over with water, poured over with water, and then God lights that sacrifice on fire, and I'm there present seeing that, and I'm like, I was there. I was there.
Right.
Yeah. So it comes alive.
Yes. Yeah, that sounds...
It's like we're all one.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Everything is connected. It's almost like there's no past, really. Everything's happening at once. The mind keeps track of time and space, but not the soul, but not the spirit.
That's right. It's like eternity is now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. No past, no future. Right. Not even now, because now implies time too. Right.
Oh, yeah. The eternity is here.
Yeah, right. Yeah, wow. There's so much freedom, right, Jason, just to contemplate this idea with the intellect. Like, this is freedom. Without even trying to rationalize it.
Yes.
So do you apply this spiritual knowledge, or do you integrate this spiritual knowledge into your counseling business services?
Absolutely.
You do. Okay. How do you do that, Jason?
And then that's also, Valeria, that's why they call it a practice, because when I started this practice, there was a whole lot of like monkey mind and like, oh, I need to ask this question and that question and this and that and this. And then it almost gets like tangential to where it's like, well, am I interrogating this person or am I counseling this person?
Yes.
And so over the years, I've backed off a lot of that and hopefully have become better at the craft of listening before providing any kind of feedback at all. Maybe they'll ask. So there are often an hour-long session where you can just sense they need to talk, and they need to talk about this thing that was connected to this thing and that and this and that. And by the end of their dialogue, they've covered 100 situations in which I could never just, photographically remember everything that they said, but I'm looking for the heart of what it all is. Is it you felt like you were powerless, or did you feel like you were helpless, or did you feel this or that? And so when the time comes, it might be the last 5 minutes of the session, I may be able to have the opportunity to ask a question like that they might not even have the answer to right there. But it might help them to process in the days and the weeks to follow what that means in the context of everything that they laid out. That's going to be a lot more meaningful for them as they go through their own process.
Right. Listening, it's such a huge part of communication, isn't it? And sometimes we just forget about it and do most of the talking, which is necessary for some of us to release so much that's in there. I view the mind as, the instrument that guides us here through this reality the body, of course, there's this very strong sense of survival, and the mind's very good at it, protecting the body and, of course, protecting itself emotionally, psychologically.
Yes.
If you were to find words to describe this, wow, it's even not easy to kind of come up with a question. Let's see. There's the mind, but there's something that the mind belongs to. Let's say the way I see it, it's that God, it's not that God is in everything, it's that everything is in God, including the mind. If this is true, if it makes sense to you.
It makes sense.
It does? Yeah. Have you practiced or have you contemplated the idea of where this other, let's say, realm is? There's the mind, and there is the realm of God. So how do we know the difference, Jason? Perhaps that's the question. Yeah, between the voice of God, the realm of God that's here now, or here, and the mind.
So is there a difference?
Yes, right. Well, I do see a difference, but that's interesting. Who is seeing the difference? The mind itself.
That just made me think of the concept of God not wanting us to be robots. Because if God in his infinite wisdom had said, I want robots that will obey me and be loyal to me and do this, then there would be no difference. But I think to answer that question, where I see the difference in myself is where I decide to do something without presenting it before God first, but to give him the chance to be with me on that quest. If I bring it before him and let him be with me on that quest, I feel much more blessed than if I just get into my monkey mind and try to tool it in a way that maybe just by my own smarts or whatever I've accumulated with tools throughout the years. And I'm like, oh, this will work with it. Just kind of maybe getting too rushed or busy and not checking in with God on that. A lot of those plans just are disasters, It
So
takes
true.
a little, maybe they're not a complete disaster, but it doesn't take long before I ask, wait a minute, I need help.
Yes.
Yeah.
And how do you know, once you have engaged in action, what are the signs that we are coming from that place, which God, to me, or the realm of God, has to do with love, kindness. Well, it is good from the human experience, but it's fair. In a way, it's compassionate. It's benevolent. Is that the way you see it, the way you measure, the way you know for sure that you're coming from that place?
Oh yeah, and to use a physical example, my wife is one of my best indicators of, wait, hey, am I coming? Okay, yeah, she just called me out. I just came from more of a selfish place with that statement or that comment or that attitude, and then it's all of a sudden like, oh yeah, that's not closer to God. That's closer to my own idea of what's right.
That makes it. It's good to have somebody like that.
Yeah, so that's a recalibration. That's kind of a fixing on God, and then maybe drifting away, and then fixing again, then drifting away, and then fixing again, and it's kind of this dance.
It's not a destination. Yeah, that's another interesting topic, isn't it? That about healing and even spiritual knowledge or spiritual enlightenment, realizations. That we realize the truth, we have that glimpse, and then we need to, it's almost like reinforce that understanding, that realization by bringing the body-mind into alignment with that truth.
Yeah. Yeah, it's easy on top of the mountain when you're right there directly with God, and then you come back down off the mountain into the humdrum of life, and then you just get hit at all angles with all kinds of different stuff, and it's like it's really tempting or easy to fall out of line with God, I think, and get more into like, oh man, this sucks.
Yeah, complaining, all the complaining, right, the resentment and all that. That's the, I love the way you say that, the dance. Yeah, I usually use that word too. I love this this analogy of movement. So it's always moving. And you mentioned free will. So yeah, God is not a controlling entity.
Yes.
Right. So that really makes sense to me. Do you also contemplate the idea that God's not a thing or not a person, not even an entity? Because we see everything as objects. And I wonder if you have contemplated the idea that God is not a thing.
Well, when I think about Jesus, I look at a miraculous sign that he would do, like changing 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish into enough to feed thousands of people. And I look at that as a spiritual happening. That's a miraculous sign, is a spiritual happening. There's no earthly explanation for it. And that's in John 6. And if you went further into John 6, you see later some of those people who witnessed him doing this miraculous sign, they wanted to track him down and follow him. And really what they were looking for was let's elevate this guy to be our king so that he'll give us bread every day. Like, we'll never have to worry about food of the physical kind. And here's Jesus saying, get to the spiritual, get this stuff down. This is spiritual stuff I'm telling you about. It's not about the bread.
Right.
I'm not here to be your bread king. I'm here to show you how to be closer to God. Where
the wealth really resides.
Yeah.
The true wealth.
Yeah, don't worry about this food and water and clothing and shelter so much. God already knows that you need all that stuff, but pray, basically. I mean, he said that many times. You need to pray more.
Right, yeah, establish that connection. That's already there. We never lost connection with God, but we're just very distracted, right, with the mind. Yes. So that's one of the things that I have. I was raised Catholic, born in Brazil, and then I remember being exposed to the Bible studies and all, listening to the stories. But then later on, because I went through a lot of traumas too with my house, with my parents, and then I wanted to kind of find out, just listen, stay quiet, and kind of listen to different philosophies, like what indigenous people, had to say about God. What about Hindus? What about Jewish? The one that makes sense to me the most, from the point of view of explaining what God is. How can we experience God without faith, without believing it, without even trusting? I wanted to find something that could explain God in a way that I could experience it. Like in everyone, not just myself, but everyone, everyday life, human life. So in that I found Vedanta. That's is a Hindu philosophy of thousands of years. It's called Advaita Vedanta. Oh, you heard about it too, Jason? Yeah.
The one I've read is Bhagavad Gita.
That's really the foundation, and the Brahma Sutra and the Bhagavad Gita. And then you have the Upanishads. So those are the 3 kind of, they come together, those scriptures, and then everything else is commentaries and kind of trying to dissect more the information in different ways. There are so many schools of spiritual philosophies based on those 3 scriptures. But I want it to be simple, really simple. Like, how can I experience what God is right here, right now? And that's, you see, because when I listen to you referring to the Bible, the stories about Jesus, my concern with that is that now we believe that's the only way we can experience God. To believe that's the only way that we will know that, it's true that God's here. If I can perform miracles, or if I can see somebody doing that.
I see.
So that created a lot of issues, as you can imagine, and we know in history. People being killed because of it, too. So a lot of violence came from that. Yeah, so now it's more like when I go to sleep, and sometimes I can feel like I lose contact with the body-mind. I have no idea who I am anymore. So it disappears, this reality. And then I go to sleep, and then there's a dream reality. And then I start dreaming about a lot of things. And then everybody experiences this. And then we have deep sleep, which is you're completely in darkness. And then we wake up, I slept really well. But in truth is, who remembers that? Because the mind was not there. It was not really active. We're in deep sleep. We couldn't remember anything, like under anesthesia or coma. Right. We can't remember. Yeah. So who remembers those things? That we slept, there was blankness, darkness, or whatever it is. So that, to me, is God.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It's always there. It never leaves.
It's always there.
Right, when the body goes, it's still here. Where would God go? It never leaves.
As you were talking, like, 3 different things came to mind.
Yes.
Yeah. I was in school, and this was probably junior high or something. I don't know. Reading through our textbooks and science class. And just something really interesting happened one day where I saw the physiological design of the bumblebee. Yeah. The science can't explain how it flies. And immediately right there, I was like, okay, there's God. There's God. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. And then there was, as when I was working in, downtown Phoenix, working with serious mental ill, and a lot of times substance abused, a combination of like a co-occurring disorder of the mind, and working with folks like that. I came across a picture one day of a caterpillar and then a butterfly, and it said there's nothing about a caterpillar that tells you it's going to be a butterfly.
Yeah. Hi.
And I'm like, whoa, okay, there's God again.
Yes. Yes, right. That's it.
And then the third thing, because you were talking about the dream world, I'll sometimes have what you said was the darkness and have no memory. Yeah. Then sometimes I'll have the vivid dream where it feels like I'm actually there. And there's some, brain putting together all the billions of pieces of information that we process through a day. And in the dreamland, it's trying to make sense of it. Well, in my dreamland, even just last night, I was in the dream with one of my basketball teammates. And we were side by side with someone who was experiencing a terminal illness internally. Outwardly, you couldn't see anything was wrong, but inwardly there was a terminal illness, and they were wearing like headphones in my dream. And then we were offered to listen to the headphones in the dream. And when we put the headphones on, we had the opportunity to hear what that person was experiencing inwardly in their terminal distress. Right. And I looked at my basketball teammate, and he looked at me, and we had that shared knowing. Like, we knew just by looking at each other, like, wow, that's bad. Right. What they're going through. And let's have compassion for this.
And that, to me, shows it's not that God is in everything, but everything's in God. So that's why we have those experiences, even in dream, of connecting the minds and knowing certain things. That some people predict the future. We see that happening. We have the experience all the time. Think about somebody, and then the phone rings or an email. So because everything's happening in God, so of course everything is one. But the minds are separate, though. The minds are that piece of free will. So we all have that choice.
Sure.
To align ourselves with that reality, God reality, or not. Sure. And, I try to understand why a lot of times, we want to rush the process so everybody stops suffering. We can end suffering.
Sure.
But I guess the only thing we can do is live the God reality ourselves. And then who knows?
Yeah, because those who are imprisoned and those who are the imprisoners are both in suffering.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, for sure. How do you define mental health these days, Jason?
Well, mental health I would define as an active process that somebody engages in on a regular basis to optimize their life, whether that's through um, cognitive therapy, EMDR, body work like acupuncture or something like that, or just taking pursuit of meaningful and measurable goals that may or may not work. So those goals may need to be adjusted on a regular basis in order for them to continue to have like kind of a flow dynamic to them, so that it's not like, oh, this became too challenging and but I don't have enough skills to meet the challenge. So because it became challenging and I don't want to work on my skills, I maybe burn out and I quit and I feel helpless. Or if maybe I have too many skills and the challenge is too easy, so I don't increase my challenge. Well, then maybe I just get bored and give up. So how do I keep my challenge level and my skill level in kind of a sweet spot to where I can continue to move and grow, and really in that sense you would never ever reach your potential, because your potential becomes a new plateau to where you can go to a different place from there.
That's true. Wow. So that's the idea of growth, of course, of balance, finding the harmony. A lot of times I do listen to, I have lots of conversations here about balance and harmony, but I love the idea of inner peace. I think from there, so much can manifest without even trying too hard.
Absolutely. Yeah. The mindfulness.
Right. Yes. The state of peace, which has a lot to do with spirituality. It's something that it is not disconnected from my perspective.
The being, not the doing.
Yes, right, okay. Jason. Yeah, starting with that, right? It's from the inside out. Yeah, it's always, for me, I remember trying so hard to make things happen from the outside. Get something from the outside to make the inside happy, the mind happy. It never.
Oh, that's right.
Never happened. So once that I shifted perspective, the attention to inside, then everything changed. The outside changed.
Yeah, right.
And then harmony came into play, and then the idea of growth and all that. I love curiosity, though. I think that is, there's something about remaining open and innocent. Like, oh, I don't know this, I don't know that. Although I do love talking about spirituality from a place of knowledge, but not like I know everything. It's just that I know that the only thing that's true, that's real, is God. So that I know. But I don't know how I know it. It's like I have no idea.
You say the same thing about that. Yeah.
And then it's great to have conversations because oh, how do I know that we don't know? That's interesting. And there's a lot of fun in it from my perspective. I
get some of that too, Valeria, from the animal world. So
yes.
I could be 5 minutes from an appointment that I have to be at. And I could be walking or driving or whatever it might be. And all of a sudden, maybe I see something that I haven't seen in years.
Yeah.
This takes me back to a time when I was really feeling unsure of myself. I was feeling unsure of myself. I had a brown belt test coming up in my street self-defense classes. And that was going to be a 2-day test, 2 full days of demonstrating technique and dealing with multiple attackers and just different scenarios, stuff like that. So there was this part of me that was like, oh, that could go really bad. You could fail. But then there's another part of me that was like, you wouldn't have been asked to take the test unless they thought you were ready, and you worked hard for it. So there's a chance that you could do it and it could be fine. But there was this just back and forth, almost like a battle of the mind happening, in this. And I'm walking through the park one day and I look up in the sky and here's an eagle flying overhead. An eagle flying through just a regular residential neighborhood. And I couldn't believe it, because not only was it an eagle, it was a bald eagle. And I've seen birds of prey in the residential areas once in a while before. And whenever I do, I have to stop and just kind of watch in kind of like awe, because of just the animal world to me is like, they're not bothered by this past, present, future. The animals are perfect at being in the moment. And so I always want to pause and check that out. And so that day when that eagle flied over, I got an immediate sense of God saying, I'm with you. But then I was like, I don't know if I'm having a hallucination or if I'm dreaming this. So I don't know. And God heard me say that, I'm pretty sure, because right as I said that, a woman walking her dog comes around the corner, and she looked at me and she said, did you see that? I said,
right.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, I did.
Right. It's a confirmation not to doubt ourselves, when coming from that place. You see, because you have kept yourself open. The heart is open. And that's a beautiful message for all of us. Always being open. It's easy to doubt, to have doubts. It's all coming from the mind anyway. I'm very aware of that these days.
Yeah.
And then just being aware, that's the mind, that's its job anyway. So it's doing what it's supposed to do. It's nature. So just leave it at that. And nature itself, too, it's interesting how a lot of times we assign so much meaning to nature, whatever happens here. If there's a hurricane, so much fear, really, and too much meaning. And it's so simple in a way. To me, it's nature. It's just a product of God, of course, but it has its own laws. So, which is very simple. It comes and goes. It never really stays the same. It's like it's the way we see what we call life. It's always changing.
Right.
So it's almost like expecting death to be another change. That's how I see it.
We never arrive.
Yes, right.
It's like talking to someone who might say, once I have $1 million, then I will have no problems ever for the rest of my life. It's like, well, what are you going to do with your life when you get your $1 million? I don't know. Oh.
You have to take yourself with you, right?
Life to live after that.
Yes, right. Isn't it interesting? We just have so many ideas, concepts about what this is, but in a way it's very, very simple. But at the same time, it takes effort to go deeper and courage. Or maybe it has to be a calling. It has to be something that we have to be ready for, because sometimes going deeper too soon, it also doesn't work. It could have the opposite effect. Right.
I don't know how many times in counseling you have to just be with a person for a long time before they trust you enough to say, okay, now I'm ready to work on my trauma.
Yes. You
just have to be with them, you just have to be like real, I guess, genuine,
It's an interesting, Jason, because that's what God really is, isn't it? It's always, it's very obvious to me, or natural, I don't know what word to use, but it's so present, it's so here that I can't help it but trust it. But that, you're right, it took a long time for the body-mind complex to trust that, the divine inspiration and divine presence. It has been an interesting journey or experience. Yes. So we're almost at the end, and I do have some other questions here for you, Jason, about... you mentioned your approach to mental health and wellness. You use cognitive therapy and EMDR, and I have interviewed lots of people about EMDR. And there's something about it, hypnotherapy and EMDR, and meditation, of course, that there's a resonance about these methods that that really works. But it's highly effective, I can tell.
Yeah.
What is it about EMDR for you? Have you clearly seen in your clients, the results? It happens fast, or it's the quality of the healing process that makes a difference?
Oh yeah, I mean that's why you have, say you have a simple trauma, which we would say like, might not sound simple, but let's say you have a person who's had a fairly normal life, no abuse, no trauma, you know, but then all of a sudden they find themselves in their mid-20s and they just they got in a bad car accident and came away with, you know, bruises and scratches and minimal damage physically. But then the reality of, wow, life or death just looked them right in the eye. And maybe for the first time they had never considered doing that or having to consider that possibility. And so now they're having nightmares and a lot of anxiety, maybe panic attacks and things. And so in that kind of a case, I've seen people literally within 5 sessions have no more problems, especially if we can catch it within weeks, or weeks is better. The sooner you can catch it after the event, and as long as the person is ready to get help, you can see that healing happen relatively quickly. That can get a little more complex when you're dealing with someone who maybe had a trauma history that included 5, 10, 15 years of ongoing trauma happening, you know. But the EMDR, I think it's not an end all and be all, but it's a powerful tool, I think, when a person's ready to work on a specific situation. And that's part of the thing with the complex traumas is they may be so traumatized and dissociated that they haven't developed a focusing mechanism to focus in on where did that start. So we may have to work together and find out where that good starting point is before we can get a good result from the EMDR, a good outcome.
Right. Yeah, I never heard it that way, so that's good to know. It really helps those who are kind of, in a way, fresh with the traumatic event. It would be easier that way. I didn't hear that, so this is good to know for the audience too. Thank you for sharing that, Jason.
You bet, yeah. And if you think about it too, just like a body that's been beat up a lot, and there's a lot of physical scarring tissue, and there's like a lot of maybe guarding muscles taking place, you know, like that might take a combination of chiropractic care, massage therapy, and stuff like that to just get everything back in alignment again. Similarly with the mind, we want to have that person start from a place of confidence. So we would, if I was working with someone who wanted to do EMDR, I would look for something. Where would be the easiest place to start first in your whole trauma history? Like if you were to look at all of these traumas and you were to say, okay, they all suck, but which one would I feel would be the easiest one to work on first? And they usually have an answer right away. They might say, oh no, they're all like on a 0 to 10 subjective rating scale, and 10 would be the worst. Right. They're all 10s. And then I'm like, oh, well, okay, that's tough. But if you were to say, of all the 10s, which one is the easiest one to start first? And they have an intuition that says, I think it's this one. That gives them confidence now and resilience to go and do that therapy.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's almost like this, it's a gentle process that I love that you're very aware of that too, right? Yeah. Using kindness and gentleness to walk that path is not an easy one.
Yeah, I had good teachers.
Yeah, that helps, right? A lot.
I went through anxiety therapy in early 2000s, and I had good teachers that showed me how to set up hierarchies appropriately, because when you're coming into therapy, you want to be better tomorrow.
Yeah. Yes.
So you want, if you're wired like me, you want to go for the thing that's the hardest thing first, and that's the last thing that you want to do.
Right. Yes. Not a good idea.
You're just going to push the turtle back into its shell.
Yes. Yeah. So that you make me think about I'm thinking about therapists and life coaches, spiritual teachers. You beautiful people. It feels like having a best friend. That's what it really feels like. So thank you, Jason, for doing what you do, for answering that call for this life.
It's a blessing. Thank you.
And before we end the conversation, I do have the ending questions. But before that, I wanted to ask you a question. I made a comment here about the ebook that you have written, The A to B Journey, Benefits of Psychotherapy. What inspired you to write this ebook?
I wanted people to just have a little insight on who I am as a person. And a lot of times that's a good rule out when you're looking for a therapist that you think is going to be a good fit for you. So I like being able to give a potential future patient something like that shows a little bit about who I am and how I work and how I look at certain things. Because if you're someone who maybe is totally opposed to, some of the things that I've written in there, and that's okay. And now we know that I might not be the right fit. But if you have someone who's looking for a good fit and they like some of what they read in there, then that might give them the courage to reach out and set up a consultation. And I do that with people. I always do free consultations because I want to find out if this is a person that I have skills that can help just as much as they're trying to find someone who can help them.
That's true. Yeah. So it's a mutual kind of dance of finding out what benefits both of you, right? Client and professional. I agree. I love this approach. There's something you say, there's so many things you say in the book that caught my attention. I will mention what caught my attention the most. You talked about some of the potential, you actually phrased it that way, some of the potential miracles that can occur when effective counseling takes place. And then you mentioned the events, what could happen. And then there's a section where you write, people heal by seeing their problems for what they really are, then letting them go. They come to find out they can be safe. They come to find out they are honorable and lovable. Okay, just as they are. They can accept themselves. They can come to realize that they have choices. They learn to have hope. That's just a section there, but it caught my attention. It's almost felt like a meditation, like a song to me. So
awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jason.
I'm thankful for that feedback. Thank you.
Thank you for the contribution to peace. And that kind of peace that I believe in, inner peace. So this is what you do is all about, getting deeper into our own selves, getting to know who we really are. So it's truly beautiful what you do. Thank you.
Thank you. You bet.
And before we say, actually not saying goodbye for now, but I do want to ask you a few more questions, the ending questions. Is there anything that you wanted to disclose, that you wanted to share, and that you left unsaid for this conversation? Is there anything that comes to mind?
I think I said more than I thought I ever would say.
Yeah, good. That's good to know.
I think you had good questions. Yeah, you made me think about a lot of my own process from starting to like where I am now. And you helped me to find, like as you were talking and as I was connecting with your words, images and experiences, things like that were coming up, where I was like, okay, I never would have even thought about talking about that if you would have said, hey, what's on your mind like an hour ago.
Right. Yeah, that's, I live for these things. I don't know why, since I was very young. So deep conversation is what I'm interested in. I'm very curious, so that's what it's coming from. But I know it's something that, unfortunately, not too many of us can engage with, not yet. And I wish I could just walk outside and talk to all my neighbors, everybody walking on the street.
Yeah. I feel that way with people sometimes, and I'm just like, man,
yes.
It'd be nicer to talk about more than just, the price of gas.
Yes, the weather and the hair, bad hair day and all that for women.
Yeah,
yes.
And when you say curious, I also like maintaining a sense of wonder about the world.
Yes, that's it.
And I get that from Whitney Hopler, who does a lot of good work with maintaining a wonderment kind of frame of mind about as you look around at the world, and even just looking at a tree or an animal or a family playing together, or just those positive feedbacks, the interaction with that other human being, and being able to bring a smile to their day, or maybe even a laugh. I mean, that's great stuff, and if you keep that open to the curiosity and the wonderment, you get more and more opportunity. I think God, that is God, and so you're going to notice that opportunities for that kind of stuff grow and grow and grow.
Beautifully said. Yes, trillion times to that flavor, right, of being open. Yes. Oh my God, what can I say?
Yeah.
What is another word for healing, Jason?
Optimized.
What 3 experiences you wish everyone to have before they lose the body, before they die?
To have peace with God, to have a passion for something in life that they do, that they love, whether it's a hobby or a sport or something that keeps them active.
Yeah.
And positive social relationships.
That's a big one, too.
Yeah.
Thank you so much again for your presence, for this spiritually inspired conversation and spiritually inspired life that you are living, you're experiencing. Thank you so much again for being open.
Amen.
So before we say goodbye for today, where is the best place to find more information about you and what you do, Jason?
That would probably be my Psychology Today webpage.
Okay, I do have your website here.
Yeah.
So I'll have both of them. Okay, those 2 links. So your website is deserteaglecounseling.com.
Yes.
And psychology. I have the Psychology Today link as well. So I have both of them under the interview profile.
Great. Yeah.
Thank you again.
I do a vlog for personal training goals, and right now I'm really working hard on a 3-on-3 tournament with a couple of my retired college basketball friends, and we're playing in June, and we've been training since August, and so I have a vlog on Eagle Wellness on YouTube.
Oh, that's YouTube.
Where I post progress of my training and preparing for this tournament.
Wonderful. That's your YouTube channel, because I do have that link too. Perfect. Yeah. So I'll have those 3 links on your podcast profile. Thank you so much again, Jason, for your presence, and we'll talk soon. Bye for now.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. To learn more about Dr. Jason Buck and his work, please visit deserteaglecounseling.com.
To learn more about this podcast, please visit fitforjoy.org/podcast. Thank you again for listening, and bye for now.